It's a common sentiment across many generations, the belief that the previous generation had it easier. Whether it's about buying a house, finding a job, or the cost of living, each generation often feels that they've got the short end of the stick compared to their parents.
So, do you think millennials have it harder than baby boomers?
Harder? Not at all. We had some of the worst inflation on record. Prices were rising faster than a kangaroo on a hot day. Oh yeah, but you guys had those crazy high savings interest rate. What was it? Like 200% or something? That's right, but don't forget about the mortgage rate. We were practically paying an arm and a leg just to have a roof. Well, at least you could buy a house. I'm 30 and I still have to live with you. Fair point. Have you tried not buying so much avocado toast and maybe save up and buy yourself a nice little tent? Oh, great idea. Where should I put it? In the backyard? Oh wait, that's your property too. I really don't know what these guys are talking about. Hi, I'm a Chinese millennial. I belong to a unique club, the first and the last generation to enjoy the single child policy. Sounds great. Only me, no siblings to fight over. But I still had to study until 10 p.m. to prepare for the Gaokao, which is the Chinese college entrance exam. Because out of 6 million students, only half of them could go to college. Oh, did I mention about the SARS pandemic just popped right during the exam days? Huh, that was fun experience. By the time when we hit college, surprise, they started charging tuition fees. Before that, it was free. Global financial crisis, boom, no jobs. Finally ready to start a family, boom again. House prices to the moon. So do you really want me to continue or you already got the picture? Hi? Are millennials worse off or better off than the boomers? The answer is not that straightforward. A study by researchers from the University of Cambridge who examined the work and family life trajectories of more than 6,000 baby boomers and 6,000 millennials in the United States suggested that the millennials are not uniformly worse off than their baby boomer counterparts. As the largest generational group in most of the developed countries, baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964, are now 60 to 78 years old. They are the children of either the greatest generation or the silent generation. They are often the parents of Gen X and Gen Ys, millennials. Because of their large numbers and the relative prosperity of the US economy during their working careers, baby boomers remain economically and politically influential. According to the Fed Reserve, over 50% of the US personal net worth belongs to boomers in 2023. In Australia, the baby boomers represent 25% of Australia's population, but own 53% of the nation's personal wealth. Millennials, or Gen Y, born from 1981 to 1996, are currently between 28 to 43 years old. In 2019, they overtook baby boomers as the largest adult generation in the US and are set to remain the most populous. Millennials were the first generation to grow up with the internet.
Watch, that's pocket power. Widescreen or multi-screen games you can play indoors or out. They tell you the score and even the time. They're pocket power. They're Game & Watch. 14 in all, only from Nintendo.
Despite their numbers and being tech-savvy, many call them the unluckiest generation in the US, facing slower economic growth since entering the workforce than any previous generation. This had led to discussions about whether millennials might be the first modern generation to end up economically worse off than their parents. Is it the truth though? Let's compare some aspects of these two generations, starting from education. For baby boomers, education was more than just learning. It was a direct ticket to the middle class. This generation saw a significant rise in educational attainment, with 89% completing high school and 29% earning a bachelor degree or higher. College was relatively affordable during the 60s and 70s, with the average annual tuition at private four-year institutions costing about $2,400 in today's dollars, representing 24% of the average family income at the time. In addition, post-World War II veterans received substantial support through the GI Bill, which provided low-cost mortgages and covered tuition and living expenses for higher education. Moving to millennials, this generation has pushed educational boundaries even further. Approximately 39% of millennials between the age of 25 to 37 hold at least a bachelor's degree. This is a noticeable increase from the baby boomers at the same age. Educational gains have been particularly pronounced among millennial women, with 43% achieving this level of education compared to just 21% of boomer women. However, this surge in educational attainment comes with significant challenges. The number one issue is the rising cost and student debt. The cost of education has skyrocketed, with the average university tuition in 2006 around $19,000 per year, now accounting for 32% of the median family income. Consequently, student loans have become a burdensome reality for many millennials, with the average debt hovering around $30,000 per individual. The number two issue is the increased competition in the job market. As more millennials earn degrees, the value of higher education has paradoxically diluted. Baby boomers grew up during a period of remarkable economic expansion in the United States. After World War II, America emerged as a global industrial leader. In 1955, the first McDonald's franchise opened its doors. In 1962, Sam Wilson opens the first Walmart, originally known as Watson's 5 and 10. In 1964, Nike, initially called Blue Ribbon Sports, begins disrupting the athletic wear market. In 1968, Intel was founded. In 1971, FedEx was launched. In 1975, Microsoft was founded. During the 1950s and 60s, the US experienced stable economic policies, low unemployment, and robust GDP growth. The industrial and manufacturing sectors were thriving, creating a high demand for labor that often led to better wages and job security, even for those without a college degree. Contrast this with millennials who entered the job market during the Great Recession, the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Many found themselves underemployed, working in the jobs that didn't match their qualifications, or part-time roles when full-time jobs were needed. Moreover, millennials have had to navigate major shifts from manufacturing to service-based economies. These changes demand continuous skill updates, a challenge compounded by global competition for jobs, including positions that are increasingly outsourced or remote. To put this into perspective, consider two fictional representatives, Ben, a boomer born in 1955, and Michelle, a millennial born in 1988. By the time Ben was 35 in 1990, the economy was vastly different from what Michelle would experience at 35 in 2023. Research from the University of Cambridge shows that by age 35, 17% of baby boomers had moved into prestigious professional careers, compared with only 7.3% of millennials. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: home ownership. Owning a home has traditionally been seen as a milestone of success and stability, but for millennials, this goal has become increasingly challenging to reach compared to baby boomers. For boomers like Ben, who was 35 in 1990, buying a home was a more achievable milestone. At that time, the average cost of a home was $151,000, while the median annual family income was about $30,000, making the cost of a home about 5 times the annual income. With a personal saving rate about 10% during the 80s and 90s, a boomer could realistically save for a 20% down payment in approximately 10 years. Contrast this with millennials like Michelle, who turned 35 last year. The average home price had skyrocketed to $417,000, 7 times of the national average income of $60,000. With the personal saving rate halved to about 5% during the 2010s, it would now take nearly 28 years to save up for a 20% deposit. While boomers had more accessible home prices, they faced their own challenges with extremely higher mortgage interest rates. In 1981, for instance, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate peaked at 18.63%, making monthly payments extremely high. Despite these high costs, dual-income households during the boomers era made it somewhat easier to manage mortgage payments. Economic barriers have led many millennials to delay significant life milestones. At age 35, 10% of millennials were still living with their parents, compared to just 6% of boomers at the same age. Marriage and parenthood rates are also lower among millennials, who often prioritize financial stability before starting families. In countries like Australia, the burden of interest payments on a new home now represents 38% of the average wage. Back in 1989, it accounted for 64%. Now let's move on to see the cost of living. The early 1980s experienced some of the highest inflation rates in recent history, peaking at over 13% in 1980. However, the decade also saw a substantial decrease in inflation rates, eventually stabilizing to more manageable levels by the end of the decade. For millennials like Michelle, the years from 2013 to 2023 painted a different picture. Emerging from the shadow of the Great Recession, this generation faced a slow economic recovery with relatively low inflation but stagnant wage growth. The cost of essential needs such as housing, education, and healthcare has disproportionately increased compared to general inflation. In terms of wealth, statistics reveal that about 14% of millennials had a negative net worth by the age of 35. Compared to only 8.7% of boomers. Additionally, 68% of millennials held some form of debt at this age, significantly higher than the 43% of boomers who did at the same age. The median millennial wealth was approximately 30% lower than that of a boomer at 35, with figures standing at $48,000 for millennials versus $63,100 for boomers. Millennials are often labeled as lazy and entitled.
They think that they are entitled to a promotion after 3 days.
Millennials crave things like instant gratification, authentic experiences.
In reality, while the wealthiest millennials now have more wealth than ever, the economic divide has grown, leaving the less affluent significantly behind. For instance, millennials in the 90th percentile of wealth distribution in the US possess about 20% more wealth than boomers did at the same age, 457,000 compared to 373,000. 63% of low-skilled service workers from the boomer generation own their own home at 35, compared with only 42% of millennials in the same occupations. The narrative is that individuals with typical working-class careers could once afford homes and accumulate assets, but now find it increasingly difficult. It appears that millennials who have been proactive about their personal finance are generally better off than their boomer parents. However, those in less stable, working-class trajectories have either stagnated or declined and seem to be worse off than boomers when compared at the same age. So who's better off? What do you think? Baby boomers or millennials? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments below. My name's Irene. I'll see you next week.